So don't, I'm not following the slides, it will be scrolling every 20 seconds. That is done by AI. So, mine is totally different inquiry. But I don't engage with Indian philosophy. My field of research is Western philosophy, Western political philosophy. So, after reading the thematic note, so, and keeping in mind, basically, though my field of research is Western political philosophy, but I kept the fragility and the tension of the Indian society, especially the crisis that is ongoing in terms of the political regimes that has created a lot of religious tension. So, what kind of space that we can give to both religion and politics? So, and also in response to Professor Dura's yesterday's comment to the first lecture, because the kind of secularism in the Western world is treated differently. That's why they say that the intensity of the return of the religion to the public space is more intense, is more in the Western world than I would say that as a critical thinker of my own society. So I would say that secularity, although we have not experienced secular politics, to say that there is something called as an excess of secularism as such. So keeping that in mind, I look into this aspect, how religion and politics shaped our lives. This is a question that we have to keep in mind, taking note of post-secularism. There are a lot of efforts of post-secularism available to us, beginning with Habermas and so on and so forth, saying that, and also a lot of references given to re-enchantment. If modernity is disenchantment and we are coming back to re-enchantment of the world, then religion in the world affairs, again, post 9/11, we are talking about these things. Because, of course, the horrific stances of the Holy War or the revenge of the Crusaders that we are talking about. So, I am keeping in mind the world affairs and, of course, the tensions of the multi-religious societies like India, and try to come up with some argument. So, what is the new post-secular politics here? So, to keep scrolling the slides, because 20 seconds. So, the honest attempt. So, my point of view is secularism in the Western world, I would still treat it as an honest attempt to basically somewhat, rationalize the crucial world. So, keeping that in mind, the whole idea of constitutional politics, civic morality. So, there is a necessity of civic morality when we are talking about formation of political societies. There is a sense of civic morality is very much needed, and that civic morality is nothing but what political philosophers have come up with the idea of publicanism. So, how we engage publicly with each other, with our own dispositions within a secular religious society. Even if it is within a singular religious society, there are several ways of following that particular religion. Vis-a-vis, there are multi-religious societies. So, the place of individuals' dispositions and beliefs are challenging here. So, politicization of social life, the process by which our everyday non-political activities are infused into political meanings and values. So, there is a lot of politicization of our individual dispositions. The scenario, the phenomena I referred to in the previous discussion with Constanza, basically there are philosophers like Rancière, Agamben, and many others. Roberto Esposito, then Bruno Bostils, all those eminent philosophers who talk about post-foundational politics or post-metaphysical thinking or impolitical. They are worried about the politicization of things. They are worried about the loss of the sanctity of the political. Maybe there is something called as a reference to the archive politics. If you go back to the writings of Agamben, and is an attempt to modify the sense of politics and retaining the sanctity of the political. So his worry is that because there is some sense of disruption going on between religion and politics, there is the sanctity of the political is lost. So the non-juridical or the non-political is taking is conquering the realm of the political, which has to retain what is called as the social cohesion. So we all have individual dispositions, we all have our engagements with values, of course, religion being most prominent among them. So how do we live together as a cohesive society? So this is what Judith Butler talks about in all her works, cohabitation. How we have to cohabit with our differences. Differences not in the sense of superficial differences I am talking about. Differences, genuine differences we are talking about. So the modern, the secular narration. So if we are considering these as the basis of enlightened politics, there is a great puzzling question here. What is it? Failure of indigenous forms of politics and collective life, rather than treating it as a failure of the Western ideal. So I am reading in this way. We are not talking about the failure of secularism or Charles Taylor. I remember 2 years back when I attended the Rome's World Philosophy Congress, he delivered this. So where he said that because secularization, all those kind of arguments he's bringing in, there is over secularization of the world and the Western world, so we have to bring back religion to the public space. And only then the social cohesion is possible. So I am talking about it differently in the context of multi-religious societies like India, where basically religion is basically seen with fear, seen with some sense of control, an oppressive role of our Indian individuals' freedom. So in this scenario, how do we understand them? Why robust secular politics is problematic? This is the question. So violence of previous 100 years and more, taking into account all these things, and distortion of both the sanctity and validity of religion and politics of the public space. So secular theology that we are talking about, which is problematic, becomes important. It becomes a point to be retained. So then what happened to religion under the secular experiment? So that we have to have a very clear-cut answer to that. So then only we will understand why we suspect what is called as secular politics. So there are two aspects here. Religion asserting of the public's political space, or is evilish effects of what is called the ideas like the holy war, etc., is frightening more. So understanding the relationship between religion and public life comes to these 5 aspects. What are these 5 aspects? Religion and its multiple avatars. So within a singular religious realm, and many religions and many manifest forms. The second one, and ways religions engage with each other, especially in the public sphere. That's why the reason why Rawls talks about public reason in a particular form, and Habermas talks about public sphere in a particular form. And that public space or public sphere is so important because that's the space where it's a meeting point of claims, assertions, practices, etc., meet. So I am repeating this: religion and multiple avatars, many religions and their manifest forms, ways religions engage with each other, then ways religions get politicized, ways politics are taken hold by religions. These are problems that are faced by multi-religious societies. The suspicion, the social cohesion, the cohabitation that Butler refers to has become a challenge to multi-religious societies. Right? I feel, I'm not a researcher or in politics or in philosophy, but as a citizen living in the multi-religious context, I would say that there is a sense of loss of the social cohabitation. I'm not talking about cohesion, cohabitation. Because the missing point where I referred to in the last lecture is agree to disagree. We have different forms of ways of life, and we have there is no sense of prejudice. So prejudice, the problem is, like there is a saying about Indian, even though we have not seen many things in the world, we have opinions about everything in the world. So that's a problem that will lead to prejudices. So the rise of religious fundamentalism that we talk about. So there are several scholars in the West who also are talking about the perils of polarization of religion. So what is injury to civic morality it is causing? For example, Rawls' duty to civility. Rawls basically was criticized by many people for his idea of burdens of judgment or for his idea of publicanism. Yesterday most of the points were covered by Luga, so I am not going into the direction, but I refer to a work where it was his undergraduate thesis published later by Thomas Nagel. It was about an inquiry into the nature of sin and faith. So he talks about entire idea of the nature, the basis of society. the base of society, how faith, how religion, and how other concerns they basically bring together people. The whole idea talk about whenever we talk about Western political philosophy, social contract definitely has to be discussed about. Rousseau talks about those kind of things. So how we can strike that what is called as common good or common morality. It is possible. The difficulty is different in the context of less diverse societies. It is more in the context of radically diverse societies. And because in the context of radically diverse societies, there is a reluctance to that sense of objectivity that we are talking about. That what Rancière talks about. The political realm is the only realm where that sense of objectivity is possible, because there is a sense of rule of law. Everyone is equal before the law. So in that sense, how do we bring about it? That civic morality is basically being challenged, because the social life is driven by the sense of social prejudices. How we avoid those prejudices? Rawls basically foresees that. And all his works, political liberalism, loss of the people, etc., etc., he saw that there is all of them have to be in the background engagement among individuals. So, but when you are coming together as a social cohabitation or a sense of common good, so it has to be some sense of rationality that he talks about. So, America and the polarization of politicization of religion is what a writer like David Campbell refers to. Diminishes the ability. If there is an extreme polarization or politicization of religion and politics, then it causes that inability among religious leaders to speak prophetically. How we are talking about post-secularism, we are talking about religions again, but the reimagined role, but the reassigned role to it, to preserve that society from extreme fragmentation. So already the given fragmentation is something else, and causing fragmentation is something else. So, and Welch, the other writer who talks about attempts to build a good society without religion is possible. The writer called Welch who talks about the possibility of building a good society without religion, that is being questioned by many. So here, coming towards the end point of this argument, so in the fractured times, how we conceptualize this common life, this collective life. There are a lot of people who talk about collective reason. One of the finest works in this direction is Monica Olson. He talks about logic of collective action. It's basically an analytical work for formal logical research. So, but in this sense, I'm coming towards the end saying that then what is the sense of new public theology? There are people who are talking about thick public theology. The concept that is brought about thick public theology, assigning a constructive role in the public sphere. So, constructive role in the public sphere means there has to be some sense of strength within the fold of religion to shield itself from extreme politicization in the multi-religious context. So, otherwise, there is a sense of social fragmentation is indispensable. So, the condition of radical diversity, tolerance and respect are bound to be the primary civic virtues. So, tolerance is not to be understood as bearing the intolerable. That is not tolerance. It is difference. You are a Christian, I am a Hindu, you are a Muslim, I am a Buddhist. Unfortunately, in the Indian context, the movement, there is a lot of prejudices against. Like if you are a Muslim, there is a lot of things that come to your mind. And because the aura that the civil society is subjected to these days is very frightening, in fact. So, in that sense, the prophetic, in this extreme, pouncing of distorted politics is disabling religious leaders from indulging prophetically into the realm of politics. So, there is a nice argument here by Kevin O'Donnell, which is called as thick public theology, which says that any question related to living a sane life, I'm repeating this, any question related to living a sane life will involve engaging critically and constructively on fundamental assumptions about what it means to be human. So when identity has become so important, wherever we go, we are concerned about who we are. We are concerned about, we are more interested in what our dispositions are a Marxist, or a capitalist, or a religious person, or a non-religious person, then my engagement with you is dependent on it. So that is the problem here. So moral sanity and peace, how it is possible? It is revival of public theology. Then what happens to politics then? If we are talking about revival of public theology, what happens to politics? Politics has to take care of what Julius Butler talks about. Julius Butler refers to the importance of pluralism, but she nevertheless says that it is fundamentally fragile. Pluralist society cannot be held together strongly for a long time. That's what Rawls talks about, intergenerational justice. Justice cannot be achieved in one generation and it's handed over to the next generation. Next generation has to achieve its own sense of justice in the world. That's how Rawls' ideas become significant here. The problem of cohabitation, to seek to decide with whom to cohabitate. With whom to cohabitate. In educational institutions in India, I'm telling you seriously, students, in my institute, they are very much concerned about who is their roommate. To speak the same language or same religion, or I'm eating with the same table food, who is not a meat eater, vegetarian only, something like that. So, cohabitation, to seek to decide with whom to cohabitate, is to seek to preempt the basic condition of social and political existence. So, my last point here. How can I keep faith with my distinctive commitments while also framing a common life with neighbors who have a different vision of life to me? So this is the greatest challenge. This is the only challenge that we have. Otherwise, if you and me are the same, there is no point of difference. There is no point of, what is it going to say, having a kind of a adversarial sense of, what is it, living or engagement. So why not secular politics? So because here religious philosophers refer to the entire crisis that we are talking about in the world as not apocalypse from the above. It is apocalypse from below. The political crisis is referred to as apocalypse from below. So there are three authors here whom have given a very, gloomy picture of politics. One is Nabi. So 2 minutes. Rene Girard, who says that politics can never save us. And Cornel West, the fracture of the earth is deeply religious. And Charles Taylor, over secularization. So these are things that basically challenge what is called as post-secular politics. Refusal, because there is a condition that a writer called Khalid Feruni, I could not refer to in detail, Khalid Feruni, who says that there is a refusal to choose between religion and politics. I don't want to choose it. But I will engage in an internal persuasion of it. So, now I will end up the question that lies with us, every one of us. And if we can win this, we are winning the world. And that is not the question given by Rawls in the initial phase of political liberalism. How is it possible for there to exist over time a just and stable society of free and equal citizens who remain profoundly divided by reasonable religious, philosophical and moral doctrines? So how is it possible? If we are clear about this possibility, then we are creating what is spoken about by Fred Dalmyer. I was fortunate to meet him multiple times when he wrote his dialogue among religions. So that dialogue is possible. That dialogue through communicative reason of reformers is possible. So societies and politics must keep searching for a reasonable answer for this. So this is my stand. Thank you.